The alien king thought his daughter was lost in battle. Until she returned with a human, the sky over the battlefield was a burning red, a color that seemed to mirror the anger and despair in the hearts of those who fought below. Ships whirred through the air, leaving streaks of blue light as they maneuvered around massive explosions that shook the ground like thunder. The princess, tall and composed even amid chaos, guided her troops with a calm authority that few could challenge. Her armor, silver and etched with symbols of her family, gleamed under the harsh light of the war-torn sky. Every step she took was precise, her every gesture commanding respect and loyalty. The aliens she led were unlike any humans, with long, angular limbs and skin that shimmered faintly in the light, reflecting their advanced biology. They fought with both claws and energy weapons, moving with uncanny speed and efficiency. The princess's leadership had always been admired. Even the strongest generals deferred to her instincts, for she had a mind that could see patterns and possibilities that others could not. The enemy they faced was relentless. From across the shattered plains, strange, dark-skinned creatures emerged. They moved in waves, seemingly without fear, wielding weapons that pulsed with an eerie energy. Their shrieks and war cries echoed across the battlefield, making the air thick with tension. The princess's heart remained steady, though. She had faced countless battles before, and she knew panic could destroy even the strongest army. "Hold the line," she shouted, her voice clear even above the roar of explosions. "Do not falter. Today we protect our home." Her words carried across the ranks, igniting determination in the soldiers around her. Some fell in combat, others advanced with renewed vigor, inspired by the courage of their leader. Amid the chaos, the princess noticed a young soldier struggling to maintain position. She darted toward him, energy blades slicing through the air to protect him from a sudden attack. The alien's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. "Princess," he gasped. But she gave a small nod and motioned for him to continue. There was no time for words. There was only survival and duty. Suddenly, an explosion erupted closer to the front, the force of it knocking several soldiers off their feet. The princess's instincts screamed danger. She raced toward the source, her movements swift and sure. The battlefield was changing in unpredictable ways. Enemies advanced from directions they had not been expected, and some of her own troops had vanished amidst the smoke and fire. And then she saw him, a human. He moved unlike any creature she had encountered. Small, frail-looking, yet incredibly determined, he darted through the battlefield with surprising agility. In one swift motion, he grabbed a fallen soldier, dragged him to safety, and even managed to disable a trap set by the enemy. The princess's mind raced. Humans were not known in these parts, and certainly not in battle. Yet here was one, acting with courage and skill that rivaled the best of her own soldiers. She could not take her eyes off him, even as she continued to command her troops. The enemy's leader appeared, massive and terrifying, wielding a weapon that seemed almost alive. Energy arcs crackled around it, illuminating the battlefield with harsh flashes of light. The princess knew that if this creature reached her line, everything could fall apart. She shouted orders, directing soldiers to flank, to hold, to strike with precision. Her voice carried the authority of a ruler and the sharpness of a battlefield commander. The human moved again, weaving between enemy lines, his actions unpredictable yet effective. He hurled devices that disrupted the enemy's formations, created distractions, and saved soldiers who would have surely perished. The princess felt a strange sense of admiration. Here was a being so different from her own kind, yet capable of inspiring hope in moments of despair. It was as if the universe itself had sent this human to aid them when all seemed lost. Despite their efforts, the battle grew more intense. Explosions tore through the ground and smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. The princess could hear the cries of the wounded, the clash of weapons, and the constant roar of energy blasts. Yet she pushed forward, her determination unyielding. Her soldiers followed her without hesitation, inspired by her courage and the strange, almost magical presence of the human fighting alongside them. Then came the moment that would change everything. A massive explosion rocked the center of the battlefield. The princess was thrown off her feet, her armor scorched and battered. Dust and debris clouded her vision. She struggled to rise, her limbs heavy, but the battlefield was collapsing around her. The last thing she saw was the human moving toward her, reaching out before everything went black. When she awoke, the world was silent. Smoke lingered and the air was thick with dust. Her armor was torn and her body ached, but she was alive. She struggled to rise, scanning the battlefield for any sign of her soldiers, but the devastation was complete. Many were dead, others scattered. And the human, there was no sign of him. A sinking feeling filled her chest. She had survived, but at what cost? And where had that human gone? Back in the alien kingdom, news of the princess's disappearance spread quickly. The king, a towering figure of authority and power, felt a weight settle on his shoulders. His daughter, the jewel of the kingdom and a brilliant commander, was gone. Rumors of her death reached him before any official confirmation. He refused to believe it at first, clinging to hope, but as days turned into weeks with no word, grief began to take root. The kingdom mourned. Statues were draped in black, ceremonies were held in silence, and soldiers who had once followed her orders now hesitated without her guidance. The king's grief was a storm, private yet overwhelming. He wandered the halls of his palace, staring at holographic maps of the battlefield, reliving the events over and over. Every explosion, every shout, every maneuver haunted him. Meanwhile, the princess moved through the desolate landscape, weak but determined. She searched for survivors, calling out names, hoping against hope to find even one familiar face. Days passed. Food was scarce, water even scarcer, yet she pressed on. She discovered pockets of alien soldiers hiding among ruins, terrified and exhausted. She rallied them, offering guidance and hope, doing what she had always done best, leading. In one such moment, she encountered a group of injured aliens trapped under debris. Among them was the human she had glimpsed before. He had survived against impossible odds, tending to wounded creatures with calm efficiency. His eyes met hers, and in that instant there was recognition. He had saved her without hesitation, and now she could return the favor. Together, they freed the trapped soldiers, moving with a rhythm and understanding that transcended language. As they navigated the ruins, the princess realized that this human was more than just a survivor. He had knowledge and skills she had never seen in her people. He improvised tools, created makeshift shelters, and even found ways to purify water and heal wounds. The princess began to see a spark of ingenuity in him that humans were said to possess, a resourcefulness that defied expectation. The journey back to the kingdom was arduous. Every step was a test of endurance and will. Yet the princess and the human moved forward, side by side. She began to teach him her language, and in return he shared ideas and strategies that were entirely foreign to her. Slowly, a bond formed, not just of survival but of mutual respect. Back in the palace, the king continued to mourn, unaware that his daughter lived. Advisors whispered that hope was lost, that the kingdom must brace for further attacks without her guidance. The princess had been their brightest beacon, and without her the people struggled to maintain unity. Yet unseen, the threads of a new story were weaving, a story that could change everything, beginning with the unexpected alliance between a princess and a human. As the sun set on the devastated battlefield, casting long shadows over the ruins, the princess looked out over the horizon. She could feel the weight of her duty pressing down on her, but she was not defeated. Beside her, the human stood, his presence a silent promise of resilience and hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, even if the kingdom did not yet know they were still alive. And somewhere deep in her heart she held onto a spark of hope that perhaps against all odds the tides of fate could be turned. For the first time in weeks, the princess allowed herself a small smile. The battle was over, yes, but survival was only the beginning. She would return to her father, to her people, and she would bring with her something entirely new, a symbol of hope, courage, and the unpredictable strength of a human. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the kingdom waited, unaware that the princess who was thought lost was already on her way home. The gates of the kingdom were taller than any structure the human had ever seen, carved from shining metal that seemed to glow faintly under the sun. Soldiers lined the walls, their weapons raised in strict attention, watching as the princess and her unexpected companion approached. The princess walked with steady determination, her armor battered and scorched from battle, but her posture remained proud and unbroken. Behind her, the human followed closely, alert and respectful, yet moving with a quiet confidence that made the soldiers uneasy. News of the princess's return had not yet reached the palace. For months, the kingdom had mourned her loss, holding ceremonies in her honor and whispering her name in sadness. Now, seeing her alive was like witnessing a miracle, though her companion sparked curiosity and tension. The human's presence alone was enough to make the guards glance at each other with suspicion. He was small, fragile compared to the towering soldiers, and his appearance was unlike anything they had ever seen. His hair was a soft brown, his skin pale, and his eyes bright with intelligence and determination. The princess raised her hand to halt the approaching guards. "I am the princess," she said firmly, her voice carrying authority even across the distance. "I return to the kingdom, alive and well. Let us enter. But I am here and I bring someone who has helped me survive." Her eyes shifted toward the human. "He is brave, loyal, and capable. Treat him with respect." And yet here was one, standing beside their princess, alive and unafraid. The human met the soldier's stares calmly. He did not boast, did not apologize, he simply nodded once in greeting, his eyes steady. It was a simple gesture, but it carried weight. Some soldiers frowned, uncertain, but others found themselves intrigued by the quiet confidence of this strange being. Inside the palace, the atmosphere shifted. The halls were grand and imposing, with ceilings so high that the light from the upper windows barely reached the floor. Statues of past kings and warriors lined the walls, their expressions frozen in eternal vigilance. The princess and the human walked through the corridors, soldiers bowing and stepping aside, eyes following them with curiosity and awe. Finally, they reached the throne room. The alien king sat upon his seat of power, his expression unreadable at first. He was massive, even among his own kind, with sharp features that conveyed strength and wisdom. But his eyes, when they landed on his daughter, softened instantly. The weight of months of grief seemed to lift slightly as he struggled to comprehend the miracle before him. "Father," the princess said, bowing respectfully, "I have returned. And I am not alone." She gestured toward the human who stood still, waiting for her signal to speak. The king's gaze shifted to the human and his expression hardened. "Who is this?" he demanded. "Why does a human walk beside my daughter in my kingdom?" "He has proven his loyalty, his courage, and his intelligence. He is not a threat, he is an ally." "How can I trust him?" It was a spark of determination, of ingenuity, of courage that did not rely on strength or size. The king had seen brave soldiers before, but there was a quiet intelligence here, a calm presence in chaos. It intrigued him, though he would not show it. "Very well," the king said after a pause, his voice firm. "You will remain under the watch of my guards. Any disobedience, any hint of treachery, and you will face the consequences. Do you understand?" Prejudice ran deep, and humans were seen as unpredictable, weak, and unworthy of trust. She would need to prove, not just tell, that he could contribute. In the days that followed, the human adapted quickly. He learned the language of the aliens, their customs, their strategies. He studied their weapons and technology, asking questions that made even the most seasoned generals pause. His mind worked differently, approaching problems from angles that the aliens had never considered. He repaired damaged equipment in unconventional ways, finding solutions that seemed impossible. The princess watched him with a mix of admiration and relief. She had not only saved him, but she had found a companion who could navigate the challenges ahead in ways even she could not. The bond between them grew stronger, not through words alone, but through shared survival and mutual respect. Yet not everyone welcomed the human. Whispers spread through the court like wildfire. Some advisors argued that his presence would undermine authority, that his differences would cause unrest among the people and soldiers. Others claimed he might be a spy or worse, a traitor. The princess heard the rumors, but she remained unwavering. "He has fought beside me," she told her father one evening when the council tried to debate the matter. "He saved lives. He saved me. Do you not see what he has proven? I will not dismiss his value, but neither will I ignore the risks." Soldiers who were injured in training exercises were aided by the human, their wounds treated and spirits lifted. Machines that had been abandoned as irreparable were restored through his ingenuity. Tactical plans that had seemed impossible to execute were refined with his input, improving efficiency and safety. Word began to spread, first quietly, then louder. The human was capable. He was clever, brave, and thoughtful. Some soldiers began to admire him, though few dared to speak openly at first. Prejudice did not vanish overnight, but the foundation of trust had been laid. The princess continued to guide him, teaching him the culture and philosophy of her people, while also learning from him in return. Together they discovered that strength came in many forms, not just size or power, but intelligence, adaptability, and courage. The human, though small and seemingly fragile, had proven this in ways that no alien could ignore. One evening, the princess and the human stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Fires from the distant battlefield still flickered faintly, a reminder of the chaos they had survived. "You are different from anyone I have met," the princess said softly. "Your ways, they are strange but effective. I never expected a human to be so capable. I only wish to repay that debt." The princess had returned, and with her came a new ally, one who would challenge old beliefs and inspire change in ways no one could yet imagine. The court, the soldiers, even the king himself would have to adjust. A human had entered their world not as a threat, but as a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and resilience. And though some resisted, the princess knew that the tides of history were shifting, slowly but surely, with every action her companion took. The battle was not over, not yet. Challenges lay ahead, both from enemies outside and from those within the palace walls who doubted this strange alliance. But the princess felt a quiet certainty in her heart. Humanity, in all its unexpected strength, had arrived, and the kingdom would never be the same. The sun rose over the kingdom, casting long golden rays across the city, yet the warmth of the morning did little to soothe the tension inside the palace walls. Whispers echoed through the corridors, carried from council chambers to training halls, from servants to guards. The human, who had begun to earn some trust, was still viewed with suspicion by many. His presence stirred unease among those who could not see beyond the difference of species, who clung to old prejudices and feared change. The princess was aware of every glance, every quiet murmur. She moved through the palace with her usual grace, her head held high, yet she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. Her father, the alien king, had allowed the human to remain, but he watched closely, his own judgment sharp. Some of his advisors were less patient. They saw the human as a potential threat, someone who could disrupt the fragile order of the kingdom. They whispered among themselves, plotting ways to test him, to find faults that might justify his removal. In the training courtyard, the human moved with quiet precision. He had learned some of the alien fighting techniques, yet he also incorporated his own methods, blending agility, strategy, and unconventional thinking. Soldiers watched as he demonstrated maneuvers that seemed impossible, dodging strikes and using the environment to his advantage. Many of them could not deny his skill, though some still muttered, "He is different. Can we trust him?" The princess approached him, her eyes scanning the gathered soldiers. "The council is restless," she said softly. "Some do not understand your value yet." But you must be patient. Prove yourself not with words but with action." The princess and the human moved quickly to intercept, finding a young guard injured, his armor scorched and panic in his eyes. "Ambush," he gasped. "Outside the eastern wall spies saboteurs. They are inside the kingdom too. Some of the council, they want to discredit you and the human. If anything happens, we act fast." Together they were a team, their movements coordinated without a word, instinctively understanding each other's intent. That night, as shadows stretched across the throne room, a small group of conspirators made their move. They had waited for darkness, believing it would conceal their actions. Their goal was simple: discredit the human, show that he could not be trusted, and force the princess to return him to the outer lands, or worse, to the enemy. The conspirators sabotaged equipment, altered records, and whispered false reports to the guards. One of them tampered with a weapon storage room, hoping the human would be blamed if an accident occurred. Another leaked information about troop movements, intending to create confusion during an upcoming defense exercise. But the human, alert and observant, noticed the irregularities immediately. He traced the alterations back to the conspirators with careful deduction, uncovering their plan before it could cause harm. The princess followed his lead, astonished at his perceptiveness. He did not act rashly. He gathered evidence quietly, ensuring that when they confronted the conspirators, they would have no chance to deny the truth. The confrontation came at dawn. The conspirators were gathered in the council hall, confident in their deception. The princess entered with the human at her side. "You are wrong," she said firmly, her voice echoing across the chamber. "Your plan is exposed. You thought you could create chaos, discredit him, and undermine me, but you underestimated both of us." Their whispers turned to panic, and some attempted to flee, only to be stopped by loyal soldiers who had been quietly positioned by the princess. "You see," the human said calmly, his voice carrying an authority that surprised the room, "strength is not only in power or numbers. It is in awareness, intelligence, and the courage to act rightly. You overlooked these qualities because you could not see beyond your prejudice. They will think twice before doubting you again." Slowly, a shift was occurring, a change that would take time to solidify, but the first step had been taken. In the following weeks, the human continued to demonstrate his value. He repaired damaged equipment, created new defensive strategies, and trained soldiers in ways that were unfamiliar but highly effective. The princess guided him, sharing the traditions and philosophies of their people, while he offered fresh perspectives that expanded their thinking. Together, they bridged a gap between worlds, combining alien strength with human ingenuity. One day, the princess received a message from the border outpost. Another enemy force was approaching, more organized and ruthless than any they had faced before. The king called for a council, demanding immediate strategies for defense. Advisors debated endlessly, many clinging to old tactics that had failed in previous battles. The human remained silent, observing, his mind calculating possibilities. Finally, the princess spoke. "We have a new advantage," she said, her voice steady. "We have learned from him." She gestured toward the human. "His knowledge of unconventional strategies, his understanding of adaptability and quick thinking can help us win this battle. Because he does not rely solely on brute force, because he has survived where many of our own might have fallen." That night, the human and the princess reviewed plans in a secluded chamber. Candles flickered, casting shadows on the walls. The human studied maps and reports, suggesting alternative routes, ambush points, and methods of misdirection. The princess considered each idea carefully, comparing it with her knowledge of the enemy and her people's capabilities. "You think differently," she said quietly. "That is why you are so valuable. You see options we cannot see because we are bound by tradition." Together, his timing was precise, his decisions bold but calculated. The princess led from the front, her energy blade cutting through obstacles, her commands clear and inspiring. Beside her, the human moved fluidly, guiding small groups, improvising solutions and saving lives. Soldiers began to cheer, not just for the princess, but for the human as well. They saw his courage, his cleverness, and they could no longer deny his worth. By the end of the battle, the enemy was retreating. Casualties were minimized thanks to the humans' interventions. Soldiers carried the wounded back to safety, their hearts lifted by the unexpected success. In the aftermath, the princess looked at her companion with admiration. "You have done more than survive," she said softly. "You have proven that courage and intelligence are as strong as any weapon." Prejudice still lingered, but seeds of understanding and respect had been planted. The human was no longer just a stranger. He was a symbol of adaptability, courage, and ingenuity. And the princess, who had once faced the battlefield alone, now had a partner who could match her in determination and creativity. As the sun set over the plains, casting long shadows over the battlefield, the princess and the human stood together, looking at the horizon. The next challenge was coming, but they would face it side by side. The conspiracies within the palace had been exposed, the doubts among the soldiers had begun to fade, and the strength of humanity had been proven once more. The kingdom was not yet fully healed, nor were all hearts convinced. But the princess knew that change, slow as it might be, had begun. And with the human at her side, she felt certain that no obstacle, enemy or internal, could stand against them for long. The morning sky was clear, the sun rising over the kingdom with a brightness that seemed almost defiant after weeks of tension and preparation. The army gathered on the plains outside the city, their formations precise and ready, yet there was a ripple of nervous energy among the soldiers. They had faced many threats before, but today was different. Today, they would face an enemy far more organized, larger and ruthless than any previous force. The princess stood at the front, her armor gleaming under the morning light. Her eyes scanned the horizon, noting every ridge, every shadow that might hide enemy forces. Beside her, the human moved quietly, studying the formations, observing patterns, and calculating possibilities. The soldiers around them whispered, some skeptical, some curious. They had seen his cleverness before, but now he would be tested against a challenge that could decide the fate of the kingdom. The king watched from a high platform, his expression unreadable but intense. He had begun to accept the human's value, though not without caution. Today, he would see if the princess's faith in this strange ally was justified. The enemy emerged on the horizon, their numbers staggering, their weapons bristling with deadly energy. They advanced with precision, their movements synchronized as if guided by a single mind. The soldiers of the kingdom tensed, their hands gripping weapons, their hearts pounding. Fear was natural, yet the princess remained calm, her presence steadying those around her. "This is it," she said softly to the human. "We need a plan that can turn their strength against them." "Something unexpected." "You think differently," the princess said as they reviewed the battlefield together. "That is why we survive. That is why you are here." But the human's plan was in motion. Hidden teams emerged from unexpected positions, striking from the sides and rear. Decoy units lured enemy forces into traps, where energy blasts and counterattacks caused confusion. Soldiers who had doubted the human watched in awe as their small numbers created chaos among the larger force. The princess led the central charge, her blade cutting through the front lines with precision. Her commands were clear, her timing impeccable. Soldiers followed her example, their courage bolstered by both her presence and the clever strategies the human had devised. Together, they moved like a single entity, blending alien strength with human ingenuity. The enemy adjusted quickly, realizing something was amiss. Their attacks became more aggressive, more desperate. But the human anticipated their moves, predicting their adjustments and countering them with actions the enemy could not have foreseen. He directed reinforcements to weak points, suggested retreats to preserve strength, and used the terrain to maximum advantage. At one point, a massive enemy unit broke through the flank, threatening to surround the kingdom's forces. The soldiers froze, unsure how to respond. The human acted without hesitation. He led a small team through a narrow valley, flanking the enemy from behind. With precise strikes and clever use of explosives, they disrupted the formation, buying crucial time for the princess to rally the main force. The king watched from above, his eyes widening in surprise and respect. He had seen skill before, but never such a combination of courage, adaptability, and tactical brilliance. The human was not only surviving, he was turning the enemy's strengths into weaknesses, saving lives and shifting the momentum of battle. The fight raged for hours. Dust and smoke filled the air, making visibility difficult. Soldiers fought with determination, inspired by the unexpected strategies that had given them hope. The human moved among them, calm and focused, his actions precise and efficient. Injured soldiers were tended to, supply lines secured, and weaknesses in the enemy's formation exploited. The princess noticed how the human inspired those around him. His courage and intelligence were contagious. Soldiers who had doubted him now moved with renewed confidence, following his instructions and adapting to his strategies. He was more than an ally. He was a leader in his own right, though he did not seek glory or command. As the sun began to set, the enemy made a final desperate push. Their energy weapons blazed across the battlefield, their forces pressing with relentless determination. The princess and the human anticipated this, having prepared contingency plans in advance. Hidden reserves emerged, cutting off enemy retreats and securing key positions. Coordinated attacks disrupted the enemy's final wave, leaving them vulnerable and disorganized. Finally, the enemy began to retreat. The kingdom's forces, though exhausted, pressed forward to ensure they would not return. Cheers rose across the plains, soldiers celebrating the unexpected victory. Many ran to the princess, praising her leadership, but their eyes also sought the human, acknowledging the role he had played in saving countless lives and turning the battle in their favor. The princess stood beside him, her armor scorched and battered, yet her expression proud and calm. "You did it," she said softly. "You have proven what I have known all along. Strength is not just power. It is courage, intelligence, and the will to act when it matters most. Without your guidance, none of this would have been possible. You have done what many of my own could not," the king said finally, his voice deep and resonant. "You have saved lives, turned the tide of battle, and inspired courage in those who doubted you. You have earned the respect of this kingdom and mine. You are not one of us, and yet you have proven yourself more capable than many who are. That is something rare and valuable. You may remain, and I will ensure your contributions are recognized." He had not only survived, he had triumphed, not through strength alone, but through intelligence, adaptability, and bravery. As the kingdom celebrated the victory, the princess and the human stood together on a hill overlooking the battlefield. Smoke rose in thin columns from areas where fighting had occurred, but the sun reflected off the plains, golden and bright. "You have changed things," the princess said quietly. "Not just the outcome of the battle, but how people see you, and perhaps even how they see themselves." She had returned to her kingdom, but now she had a companion who could face the challenges ahead with her. Together, they had proven that courage, ingenuity, and loyalty could triumph over even the greatest odds. The kingdom was stronger now, not just in numbers or weapons, but in understanding. The soldiers had learned that strength could come in unexpected forms, that intelligence and adaptability could turn the tide of war, and that courage was not limited to one species. The human had earned a place in their hearts and minds, not as an outsider, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. And the princess knew that their partnership, forged in survival and battle, would continue to shape the future of the kingdom for years to come. As night fell, the stars shone brightly over the plains, twinkling like distant beacons of promise. The princess and the human stood together, their eyes on the horizon, knowing that challenges would come again, but confident in their ability to face them. They had survived, they had triumphed, and they had changed the kingdom forever. For the first time in many months, the princess felt a sense of peace. The human beside her was more than a companion. He was a reminder that courage and ingenuity could overcome even the most impossible obstacles. And as the kingdom slept, resting from the battle that had tested every strength, the future seemed brighter, filled with possibilities that no one could have imagined before. The princess smiled faintly, her eyes on the stars. "Together," she whispered, "we can face anything." The sun rose over streets that were once quiet with mourning, now alive with activity and the hum of progress. Soldiers trained openly in the plazas, children ran among them laughing, and merchants prepared their stalls with renewed energy. The princess walked through the city, observing the changes with a quiet satisfaction. It had been months since she returned from the battlefield, and the human, once an outsider, had become a symbol of hope for the people. Even so, not all was perfect. Some still whispered about the human, questioning whether he truly belonged among them. Prejudices die slowly, and the court remained cautious. But the princess had learned patience and resilience from the very human she had saved. She understood that trust could not be forced. It must be earned through action and example. The king had summoned her to the throne room that morning, his massive frame filling the space with presence and authority. He had watched her and the human grow stronger, both individually and as a team, and now it was time to recognize the change openly. "You have done well," the king said, his voice deep and steady. "You returned from battle alive, guided our soldiers, and helped restore the strength of this kingdom. But there is something more that must be acknowledged. There is a companion at your side who has proven himself beyond expectation." "Your Majesty," he said softly, "I only wish to serve. I did what was necessary to help the princess and your kingdom survive. Today, you are recognized as an ally and an honored member of this kingdom." The princess stepped closer, placing a hand on the human's shoulder. "You have proven that strength comes in many forms," she said softly. "Courage, intelligence, loyalty, these are the qualities that define a true warrior, no matter the species. We survived together." The princess and the human worked side by side, coordinating efforts to restore villages, train soldiers, and strengthen defenses. The human's ingenuity was invaluable. He found ways to repair machinery that had been considered irreparable, devised new training methods that improved soldiers' efficiency, and suggested improvements to infrastructure that made the kingdom safer and more resilient. Slowly, the citizens began to see him not as an outsider, but as a partner in their survival. Children asked to hear stories of his adventures, soldiers sought his advice, and merchants invited him to inspect new designs for better tools and equipment. The princess watched this transformation with quiet pride. What had begun as suspicion and fear had grown into respect, trust, and admiration. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the princess and the human stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The sounds of laughter, conversation, and life drifted up to them, a melody of hope and renewal. "You've changed this place," the princess said quietly. "Not just with your skill in battle, but with your presence, your ideas, your courage. And because I believed in what we were fighting for." The princess felt a sense of peace she had not known in months. The human beside her was no longer just an ally or a companion. He was a symbol of change, hope, and resilience. His presence had reshaped the kingdom, inspiring confidence and courage in ways that brute strength alone never could. The next morning, the king held a public ceremony in the central plaza. Citizens gathered, curious and excited to witness an event that would mark a new chapter in their history. Soldiers stood in formation, children clutched their parents' hands, and the air buzzed with anticipation. The princess and the human stood together before the crowd. The king's voice echoed across the plaza. Today, we celebrate not only victory in battle but the courage, intelligence, and loyalty that have saved our kingdom. Today, we honor those who acted with bravery, who demonstrated that strength is not measured by size or species, but by the will to act rightly. You, who once was an outsider, have shown qualities that all should strive to emulate. You have earned the respect of this kingdom and the trust of its people. From this day forth, you are an honored member of our realm, recognized for your contributions and your courage. Soldiers clapped, citizens cheered, and even the skeptics could not deny the truth of his actions. The human bowed humbly, acknowledging the respect he had earned without arrogance or pride. The princess smiled, knowing that this moment represented not just recognition, but a shift in the kingdom's understanding of strength and courage. In the weeks that followed, the human became an integral part of the kingdom's efforts to rebuild and strengthen their defenses. He shared his knowledge, taught new strategies, and inspired soldiers and citizens alike. The princess worked alongside him, guiding, teaching, and learning in turn. Together, they became a symbol of what could be achieved when courage, intelligence, and loyalty were valued above prejudice and fear. The king observed all of this with quiet satisfaction. His daughter had returned not just alive, but stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. And she had brought with her a being who had transformed the kingdom in ways that even he had not imagined. The alliance between the princess and the human had reshaped the future, proving that strength came in unexpected forms, and that courage and ingenuity could overcome even the greatest challenges. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, the princess and the human stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. The sounds of life below, the laughter of children, the chatter of merchants, the footsteps of soldiers, created a sense of harmony that had not existed before. The kingdom was alive, renewed, and ready to face the future. "You have changed everything," the princess said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Not just the outcome of battles, but the hearts of the people. You have proven that courage and intelligence matter as much as strength and numbers. Together, we are stronger than anyone could have imagined." The princess had returned, bringing with her not just survival, but transformation, showing that even in the darkest times, hope and strength could be found in unexpected forms. The kingdom slept peacefully that night, resting after battles fought and victories earned. And as the stars shone above, the princess and the human knew that the future was theirs to shape. Together, they had proven that strength came not just from power or numbers, but from courage, loyalty, and the brilliance of a mind unafraid to face the impossible. The human's presence had changed the kingdom forever. Where once there had been fear and doubt, there was now hope and trust. Where once strength had been measured only in weapons and armies, it was now seen in intelligence, courage, and unity. And in the quiet of the night, the princess smiled, knowing that together, they had created a kingdom stronger, wiser, and braver than it had ever been before. The kingdom was no longer the same. It was better, brighter, and filled with possibilities that no one could have predicted. The princess had returned, the human had proven his worth, and together they had forged a future that celebrated courage, ingenuity, and the extraordinary strength that comes from unity. And somewhere in the quiet of the palace, under the light of 1,000 stars, the princess and the human stood side by side, ready to face whatever the universe would send their way. Together, they had survived, they had triumphed, and they had changed the kingdom forever.